In this section, we're covering 1-5, addition and subtraction of real numbers, and 1-6, multiplication and division of real numbers. Again, this will be really quick because it's review, but you need a little practice on it because it's mistakes all of us make. So, with real numbers, if your two numbers have the same sign, you would add and carry the sign. If the signs are different signs, you subtract and use the sign of the largest absolute value. And again, this is an addition and subtraction. So if I look at my numbers and I have negative 21 minus 7, those are both minus signs. They're the same sign. So I would take the 21, add 7. I just take the numbers without the signs, add them together, and I get 28. And then I carry the sign. So once I write down my 28, then I write down my negative. When they're different signs, negative 21 plus 7, that's a minus, that's a plus. So I take and I subtract the two numbers. 21 minus 7 is 14. Once I have the 14 written down, then I go through and look at the 21 and the 7 without any signs on them, and 21's bigger than a 7. So I look, 21 was negative, so my 14 is negative. So when they're the same sign in addition and subtraction, you add, carry the sign. When they're different, you subtract the two numbers without the sign and use the sign of the largest absolute value. In this section, they also did the inverse property. And the inverse property says a plus negative a is equal to 0. We can add a negative, or we can just look at that as subtraction, a minus a being 0. Sometimes you'll see it just as a subtraction sign. Other times they'll add the negative and write it in integer form. So you could have it either form. They mean the same thing. Subtraction or add the negative. That's all of 1-5. You're just practicing adding numbers with different signs. With 1-6, multiplication and division of reals, we have different properties because when we multiply and they have the same signs, our answer is positive. When we multiply and when they have different signs, your answer is negative. So if I take a negative 2 times 7, that would be a negative 14. If you have a negative 2 times a negative 7, that is a positive 14. I also use the rule, if you count the number of negative signs and you have even number of signs, then number of signs, it is positive. If you have an odd number of signs, then your answer is negative. So we have only one negative sign here, so it's negative. We have two negative signs, so my answer is positive. The inverse in multiplication and division is your reciprocal. If you look at your A, you want to flip it over, because we can always put the 1 underneath. Flip it over, and it's 1 over A. When we multiply those things, we get positive 1, and it's not on my screen. There you go. Now you can see it. So when you want to find the inverse, you just take it, flip it over, and when you multiply, it will cancel. So we're getting you set up to solve equations. Anytime you're solving an equation in multiplication and division, you have to either multiply or divide. So that's where we would use the inverse property. That's all the notes for 1-5 and 1-6.